Hello again everyone, welcome to my reflection on chapter 115 of Seraph of the End. As we all know, this was a very heart-wrenching, soul-destroying chapter. And it's going to be fun to get into some of the deeper, darker, complex themes and questions that came up in this one. So please strap yourselves in. As you know, I do have a tendency to swear, so please bear that in mind. And I also have a tendency to ship. And it was one of those chapters yet again, so you can expect a bit of the older shipping discussion in this reflection. And with that, please pull up a chair, make yourselves comfortable, pour yourself a good old cup of tea, and let's get into the discussion. Now, I think we need to kick off by addressing the elephant in the room. Mika defending Guren, because that pissed me off royally, reading those lines from Mika about how Guren had to make such a difficult decision back in the day, destroying all of humanity to resurrect his squad mates, and how that was such a difficult decision for him, and therefore you needs to make a difficult decision and, support Guren in his endeavours. That very much pissed me off. It pissed a lot of other people off because after all the shit that Guren has done to both you and Mika himself, it felt horrible to see Mika actively telling you, no, you need to go along with Guren's plan. But I do think that it's logical. It comes from a place of care for you in this chapter. I'm not quite sure about the actual style of how the lines were written. Like, they were written in a weird way. I'm not sure if that was just how the translators translated it. Like, it didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like Mika was speaking to you from a place of emotion. It felt a bit weird how the lines were written. But it does make sense. Mika, to me, seems to be using Guren as a way to get you to second-guess himself, because at the end of 114, you makes the decision, based on purely gut instinct and emotion, to defend Mika. When Guren says, make your choice, you pulls out his sword. His instinct is to go against Guren and the squad. His instinct is to stand by Mika. And 115 is Mika trying to get you to consciously make a decision and to talk him out of that initial gut reaction. This whole thing is about Mika trying to get you to make a conscious choice, to make the right choice. And the way that Mika goes about trying to convince him is to bring up what Guren has done to get to where he is. And it makes sense because, you and Guren have a very strong relationship, twisted though it might be. Guren is Yu's father figure. Yu loves Guren as a father figure. So it makes sense Mika would use Guren as a way to convince you, don't throw away everything this man has done. You care about this man, don't you? Like, he's been through a lot of shit. You should be supporting Guren. And I don't think that Mika is maliciously manipulating you in this chapter. I think that Mika is considering a lot of different things here, Guren being one of them. And he's thinking, well, you don't want to ruin your relationship with this man, Yu, because when I'm gone, you're going to need him. Because as we know, Mika doesn't believe he deserves to live, which I'll come on to in a bit. But Mika is thinking, well, apart from me, Yu's strongest relationship is with Guren. So I want you and Guren to continue to have that bond. And I don't want you to fuck that up, and you shouldn't be going against him here. So I think that, while Mika is kind of manipulating you, it's coming from a good place. It's coming from a good place in Mika's heart. It's coming from what he believes are in Yu's best interests. So I think that is why Mika defended Guren in this chapter. Now let's come on to my main source of frustration in this chapter, which was not at Guren for once. It was at Mika himself. Now, Mika is really starting to piss me off because we know now that Guren and Ferid are the reasons why the orphans died. They are the cause. This whole thing was one big fucking setup from the beginning. Mika is aware of this, and yet still in this chapter he is blaming himself. He cannot get past that initial trauma. He's not getting past it. Yu, at least, we see, is sort of past the orphan's death because he doesn't want to revive them. And Yu is also knowingly prepared to go against Guren now. So Yu has developed as a character, whereas Mika is still, to me, very much stuck in that early mentality of, oh my god, this is all my fault, even though he's been presented with evidence to the contrary that no, it was not your fault at all. It's starting to grate on me a bit, and it's starting to not make sense why he continues to blame himself. And it especially pisses me off because it's passed off initially in this chapter as Mika being selfless and sort of self-righteous when he says, it's just a numbers game, you shouldn't be choosing me. You have to make the right choice, and you have to bring the orphans and the rest of humanity back. You know, Mika is playing up that kind of selfless role, being the kind person who is ready to sacrifice himself for the greater good, supposedly. But it isn't actually coming from selflessness, is it? It's coming from Mika's own self-hatred and the fact that he hasn't moved on from the past trauma. And the chapter explores that, because after Mika initially says that it's about the numbers, he then goes on to say, you know, to you, you're betraying the orphans. And then finally he admits, I don't feel that I deserve to survive instead of them again. He admits in the later part of the chapter that the reason why he wants you to pick the orphans is because he feels guilty. So when he initially says, oh, you know, I want you to do the right thing, I want you to revive humanity, it's just logical, it's just the thing that makes the most sense. That's Mika just hiding behind a facade of selflessness to me. I think this chapter does quite a good job of explaining that and exploring it. And yeah, it's starting to piss me off. It's starting to piss me off, because Mika needs to stop taking on the sins of other people onto his own back. You know, Mika being Jesus is not going down well with me at all. I'm right with you. I'm ready to pull Mika down from the cross, you know. Like, I cannot stand the fact that Mika is so ready to take on Guren's sins, Ferid's sins, and just say it was all my fault that I trusted these people and the orphans died, when it plainly was not his fault. Mika needs to start being able to put blame on other people, and he hasn't grown yet. He hasn't grown into that yet. And it's disappointing, and it is starting to grate on me, I will admit. I love Best Boy. I think he's wonderful. I love him, but it's worrying me at this point that Mika, being such an intelligent and logical character, if even he cannot get past and see that he is not responsible, like, what's it going to take to snap him out of that guilt? What's it actually going to take? Who can do that? Can you do that? I don't even know, you know. I'm starting to doubt. I'm starting to doubt if Mika is ever going to be able to want to save himself. And that is really, really depressing. Oh, and I do want to just make one other thing clear. When I say that Mika initially says to you that it's about the numbers and that he's putting on a facade of selflessness, I'm not at all saying that he's doing that deliberately to mislead you. But I am saying that it's definitely cruel towards you that he does this. It's not deliberately cruel, but it is fucking cruel to put you through the emotional ringer like this and make you doubt his initial decision in chapter 114. It's very cruel of Mika to make you pick the other side, because, you know, that's supposedly the right choice based on Mika's own twisted self-hatred. Not deliberate at all, because it's not him being cynical and manipulating you. It's Mika deep down really hating himself and wanting to die. It comes from that place of self-hatred, and Mika might be lying to himself. So, yeah. Let's not blame Best Boy for being a deliberate, you know, evil mastermind trying to manipulate you into doing what Mika wants. Like, let's not go down that route, because I don't think it's that. I think that it's just incredibly sad and depressing, and I wonder if anybody can actually snap Mika out of this state of despair and self-loathing. It's really sad. All right, now then, let's look at Yu's obsession with Mika. Is it love? What exactly is this whole thing they've got going on? Because Yu in this chapter is forcing Mika, against his own wishes, to give Yu power so that he can save Mika's life. We understand perfectly why Yu wants to do this. You know, Mika, Best Boy, should not be the one fucking dying in this situation. But where does that come from? And where is it going to actually leave that relationship? Because this has the potential to completely ruin Mika and Yu's relationship. If Mika can't, you know, get that will to live for himself, if he can't recognize that, he might see everything that Yu has just done as like the ultimate betrayal, like forcing Mika against his will to save himself. Like, that could be seen by Mika as something unforgivable, because in this chapter he says, I want you to save my heart. He wants you to supposedly save his heart by letting him die and reviving the orphans in his stead. There's a parallel there with the demons crushing his heart in chapter 101 when they kill the orphans in Mika's demon dream world. So Yu has sort of inadvertently crushed Mika's heart, or at least he's refused to save it in this chapter, because instead of going along with Mika's wishes, stated wishes, I should say, he disobeys basically, and he forces Mika against his will to fight for his own life. So that has a massive conflict potential going forward between them. I would point out though that Mika is again a lying little shit and he's lying to himself. Because in 93, we know that Mika's deepest desire is not actually to die for the orphans. He's convincing himself that he'll settle for that outcome. But that's not actually what he deep down wants. 93 shows that the thing he wants most is to be with you forever. Like, that is what he wants most. That is what he wants. He doesn't want to die. He doesn't want to be together in death with you, which was some bullshit in the chapter as well. He wants to live a normal human life, being kind and considerate to everyone with you. That's what he wants. I think that there's a lot of conflict potential between you and Mika going forward, unless Mika can actually recognise these are my honest, true desires and I have a right to fight for them. And it comes back to this whole thing about Yu's obsession, because Yu, as we've seen in this chapter, is willing to hurt Mika in order to save him. And it comes down to this obsession, and where does that come from? Because we know that Yu has been created by Shikama as a sacrifice to revive Mika. So how much of what Yu is doing is actually him consciously choosing this because of what he feels for Mika organically? How much of it has been programmed into him from Shikama? You know, how much of this is Yu falling into Shikama's own great plan of bullshit trap? There's a lot of questions over what is motivating and driving Yu here in this chapter. It is notable at this point, I think, that we haven't had any recap of the memories from chapter 90. We haven't had like a reciprocal I love you. We haven't had anything like that that could give a hint towards if Yu's feelings towards Mika are actually genuine or not. And I think that that is going to be another point of conflict that is picked up later in the story. It's going to be raised at some point that Yu was created to save Mika by sacrificing himself. And I think that Yu is going to have to face a bit of an existential crisis over, oh my God, like, is my whole life and purpose and even my desires, are they all just a lie that have been planted inside me by Shikama Doji? That has got to come up as a conflict point in the future. So you're going to have conflict between Yu and Mika because Yu is going against what Mika wants and Mika needs to overcome his own self-hatred. And you've also got the point of conflict between Yu and Shikama over, are Yu's feelings and desires real or not? I think that you've got points in favour that they are real, because we know that Mika and Yu have that weird psychic connection that has nothing to do with Shikama Doji or anybody else, it looks like, at this stage. So I think that I'm falling down on the side that Yu's connection to Mika does come from a real place of genuine love and care. It's not just something that's been planted into him, but I'm sure that it's going to come up as a conflict point. I mean, it has to, right? And yeah, I am still hopeful. I am still hopeful. My shipping heart is still hopeful that they will, you know, resolve this in a positive way and maybe they will end up together. But equally, this could go extremely tragically. If Mika and Yu end up opposing each other, almost like if Mika is still dead set against what Yu is doing and Yu continues to push down this path against Mika's will, that could be fucking tragic. We could have a Devilman ending. Like, that would be terrible. And we know that Seraph is based off of Devilman. I won't spoil it, but yeah, if you want to watch Devilman Crybaby, if you want to have nightmares for a week, if you want to cry horribly into your pillow, yeah, Devilman Crybaby is a good show. It's a good show. Very much recommend it. In terms of like my short-term predictions going forward, I think that Ashera has to give up his power to Yu in order to move the plot forward so that Mika and Yu can escape from the dungeon of death 15 floors underground and they can actually, you know, start to take the story towards its climax. So yeah, I think Ashera will give up his power, but I don't think it will be smooth sailing, because Ashera looks fucking pissed off at the end of that chapter. And we know that they did not part on the best of terms, did they? Because Yu refused to hear Ashera out. So I'm hoping that Ashera is now going to get to tell his side of the story as to why he and the Black Demons went after Mika. And I'm thinking that, you know, we'll get Shikama's plan maybe revealed through Ashera as a mouthpiece. Let's hope. And maybe as a result, we might get Mama Krul coming back on side to help our boys. Because as we know, her loyalties lay with Ashera. They do not actually lie with Guren and Ferid. She just wants her brother back. That's all she cares about. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that if Ashera can convince Yu and Mika to follow dear old daddy Shikama, that means then that Krul might be convinced to follow Ashera, and then they all start working together. I'm hopeful for that. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to a Krul and Ashera redemption. Like, I'm ready for this, because as you know, like, I was really worried that Krul was beyond moral redemption at one point. I was like, oh my God, she conspired with Ferid. She knew about the orphans dying. It's terrible. I got that completely wrong. I got that completely wrong. She doesn't actually know who Guren is until like chapter 40-ish within the main canon. So no, Krul did not conspire with Ferid and Guren to kill the orphans off. That was my bad. I got too into it. I got too conspiratorial. And I'm glad that I was wrong on that point. So yeah, I'm very hopeful that she will be redeemed and Ashera will be redeemed. And oh, who knows, guys, we might get the happy ending. We might get a happy ending. So yeah, I think that sums up my feelings and thoughts on this chapter. Sorry if it was a bit rambly. It was a bit difficult for me to sort of divide up everything into neat sections this time around for some reason. My brain was not cooperating. If you did enjoy this video, please give me a like, comment and subscribe. And you can also connect me on social media. I will pop the links on the screen now. And yeah, with that, guys, please take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one. See you later.